It's a great thing.
Okay, so we are truly blessed once a year to have Ira come and speak to us. I know he cringes when I say it, but he is a world-renowned scholar in this ancient Hindu philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, non-duality. And he's going to be talking in California at the Bhakti Fest, September 7th through 11th. We're talking about the fundamentals of Vedanta and its practical applications to devotion. And he's here fresh off of editing and publishing his guru's masterwork, and it is also called Steps to Self-Realization, as taught in the Bhagavad Gita. Excellent, excellent book for those of you who want to take a serious interest in this topic. And one more note, just to let you know, Sophia couldn't be with us tonight. She sends her love. She's got a bum ankle that's soon to be operated on, but she's here in spirit. And now, in a similar spirit of communion, will you all silence your cell phones?
So, thanks Paul and Evelyn for once again allowing me to come and speak about a subject that I'm obsessed with. So, this type of subject is not really that easy of a subject. It's a little difficult to make it easy, especially for people that are not that familiar with the basic ideas. We all come here from out on the street, and we have so many other things going on in our lives that it's hard to focus even on this subject, because it can seem rather arcane, removed from our ordinary life. And so, in order to remedy that, what we're going to do, what I'd like everyone to do, not mandatory if you don't want to, I find that if we chant one Om, you've all heard this word Om, right? And then just after the Om, we'll stay quiet for 5 seconds. Hopefully some people's minds, hopefully my mind, will get a little quieter, and then we'll begin to talk. So join me in this. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavai Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vidvashavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That's a little traditional prayer that says, we're hoping somebody gets something out of this talk. So, the name of this talk, as the email that went out, is Steps to Self-Realization. For those that have attended the previous year's talks, I normally don't talk much about the steps. I like to talk about self-realization, but not so much the steps. So in that title, there are steps to self-realization. So I think in order to make this somewhat understandable, let me just start with the basic concept, once again, of the self. It's a critical concept in this whole teaching. What should be appreciated about this teaching is that this is not theology. It has nothing to do with dogmatic theology. that you have to believe in some God, in some revealed text, in the authority of some guru or teacher. The beauty of this teaching, and also it has nothing to do with mysticism. The truth of this teaching is not because some yogi attained some special thing that we don't know about. It's not even like the Buddha. We hear the story of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. One, after meditating, he attained nirvana and woke up and became the Buddha. So who knows what happened under that tree? But we're not under that tree, so we just have to assume that whatever they tell us. But Vedanta is not like that. And so let me try to tell you what is the basis of this whole thing. It's based on the common experience of everybody that's here right now and available to everybody. You don't have to believe it. It's either a question of recognizing a fact. It's stated as a fact. So whether there is this fact or not, you have to determine for yourself. So when the Bible or the Torah says there's a heaven, and when you die, you probably, if you're good, you'll go there, that's not a fact that you can verify here and now. It's just a blind faith, and you live with it and you die with it. But this teaching is very different than that. So let me see if I can bring this out. What is the self in Vedanta? I'll try to make it very simple, and then I'll expand on it a little bit. All of us here have an idea about ourselves. I think I am so and so. I am a person. I live in such a place. I have a wife. I have children. I have a bank account. I have a car. This is who I am. I am this. And this is mine. This idea is common to everybody. We all feel like that. And when we're sick, we say, I'm sick. And when we're afraid, I'm afraid. And all of those qualities that make up our ego. In Sanskrit it's called the ahamkara, the I notion. And we all have an I notion. Unless there's some mental illness, it pretty much stays with a continuous identity. I was a child, then I went to school, then I got married, then I got a job, and here I am now on a Friday night sitting on a chair. This is my story, this is who I am. Everybody believes this. What this teaching says is that every thought that I have in my mind, whatever the thought is, I am happy, I am sad, I believe, I don't believe, whatever the thought, that all of those thoughts are in fact objects to you. All your thoughts are objects to you. This is not a theological belief. You have to see if it's in your own experience. Is it true that the thoughts that are appearing, they're coming and they're going, and they're objects to me. They appear and they're appearing to me. And there's another thought that also appears to me, and that's the I thought. I am fat, I am thin, I am fair, I am tall, I am short. That I thought is also just a thought. It doesn't always appear. When you're engrossed in different things, the I subsides, and then later you say, oh, I did that. That thought is also an object to you. So when you say object to you, who's the you? If the ego, the I thought, is an object, it's appearing, who's it appearing to? It appears to me. Sometimes it doesn't appear to me. So Vedanta says the real self is the me that's aware of all the thoughts, including the ego. So is this a mystical thing that I'm talking about? Or is this the common experience of every human being here? If it's the common experience, then you don't have to believe me. You can check it in your own experience to see the truth of it or the falsity of it. I'm not saying that this is too easy, because in fact, everyone has the idea that my thoughts are conscious thought. And when I have no thoughts, I'm unconscious. But what I'm asking, the fact that has to be seen is that I'm aware when the thoughts are there, I'm aware that they're changing, and I'm even aware sometimes the thoughts go away. I wasn't thinking of anything, there was no thoughts. How do you know that? Because I'm the subject. The thoughts are objects. They appear and disappear. That subject that's in everyone's experience. Everyone here, that's the claim. So you can tell the truth of it by examining your own experience right now. That's why it's not religion. It's not a belief in some God that exists somewhere in some heaven. The self is the witness of all of your thoughts, all of your perceptions, all of your conceptions. Stay with me. I want to take it just a little bit further. Not only am I the subject, the conscious subject that's aware of all my thoughts, including my ego thought, that also appears in this. And not only that, all my perceptions, my perception of the world is an object to me. I perceive that, I'm aware of it. I perceive that, I'm aware of it. The perceptions are changing, but me as the subject, that remains. So I'm the witness of the whole perception of the universe. Now, follow me one further step, because in order to realize who is this subject, the subject in me that's aware of all of these thoughts, including the Ira thought, the me thought. I'm also aware of my whole waking state. When I go like this, my whole waking state, what do I mean by that? As soon as I woke up, the whole waking world, with everyone in it, appeared in my waking state. When we do it like this, now I'm the witness of the whole state. What's in that state? Time, space, causality, other people. But that's not all that's appearing. This is also part of the waking state. This body that came with the waking state, my senses, the mind, the ego, you have to throw that into the waking state too, because it wasn't appearing when the waking state wasn't appearing. So if you can see that the waking state appears to you, not just your thoughts, but the whole state, I'll make it easy. If you think about your experience of dream, then you can see clearly. The whole dream appeared. As soon as the dream started, there was the dream time, the dream space, the dream people. And I also, I was in the dream, and I'm talking to my friend, and I'm having a conversation, and I'm telling him there's a tiger over there, and we have to run now, it's going to be a problem. But that whole dream, with the time, the space, the causality, everyone knows it's just appearing to me. I'm the only knower of the dream. My dream state in which that dream world was appearing to me. How about my waking state? Is that appearing to me? if the two states are appearing equally, just like the dream appears to me, as soon as the waking appears, what happens to the dream? It's sublated, it's canceled, it's falsified. Oh, it's just a dream. This is the real deal. The state that we're in is the state that we think is waking. In fact, to call that other state a dream is a prejudice of the waking point of view. Because when you're in the dream, it's waking. That's what I mean by a dream. At that time, you take it as real. It's all real for you as long as the dream is going. It's not until you wake up, then you falsify. But if you look from the point of view of the subject, you'll see that just like the dream appeared and canceled the waking, and just as like when the waking came, the dream went. The states are canceling each other. Who's the one that knows that the states are coming and going, appearing and disappearing? They're appearing to me. That me is not the ego that appeared in the waking. It's not the ego that appeared in the dream. Follow me a little further. This self that's the witness of both the waking and your dream. A couple of things. Nobody believes that the dream world that appeared during my dream has any existence apart from the dream. When I wake up, when the dream ends, that dream world comes to an end. Nobody thinks, oh, the dream world, my dream's over, but the dream tiger's still sitting there somewhere. No, as soon as the dream ends, everything that was appearing in the dream, you realize, oh, it was just a dream. None of it really existed. It's just imagination. You dismiss it. The dream world is concomitant with my dream state. And when my dream ends, my dream world ends. But nobody believes that about their waking state. As soon as my waking comes, my waking world is there. But everybody believes even when I'm not awake, my waking world continues. Yes? It must continue because when I wake up again, it's still sitting here. So it must continue. The problem with that reasoning is the guy in the dream, you can ask him, hey, did you have a dream last night? Yeah, wow, crazy dream. Well, I'm glad it was just a dream, it wasn't real. But this is real. But as soon as you wake up, you realize what you thought was waking was a dream, and what you thought was a dream was just a dream in a dream, because a dream is something that appears and later gets sublated. This waking state does appear to you, and it does get sublated. Sublated means it goes away. It comes to an end. You continue because you're still there now seeing the dream. So now you as the witness of both of these states, look what happened. From a puny ego existing in a universe that's infinite with billions of galaxies, and we're on this little planet, and I'm just a little molecule, nothing. From this point of view, the whole universe exists in me. It appears in me. It can't exist without me. And even when it disappears, I'm unaffected. If I'm cut in the dream, when I wake up, I realize I wasn't cut. It was only a dream. If I'm cut here, if you can see that this waking and dream are exactly the same from the point of view of the subject, there's no difference. You only call it a dream because you're looking at it from this state. But really, from the dream, it's waking, and they're both false. What that means is the subject in you who's the witness of waking and dream is not in time. Time is in the waking. Time is in the dream. But I'm not in time. What does that mean? That the subject in me, my true self, that witnessing consciousness that sees both of these states, is not in time. What does that mean? It was never born. It doesn't get old. It doesn't get sick, and it doesn't die. Because you have to be in time to get old and get sick and die. But my nature is ever pure, ever free, ever the same, unchanging, beyond time. The other thing to notice, since I'm not in time or space, there can't be many. Myself, there's not many selves, because the self would have to be existing in time and space for them to be many selves. But I'm beyond time and space, so there's only one self. I'm that one reality that never changes. That so when the dream appears, it can't appear without the light of my own self lighting it up. I'm the light of the dream. I'm the light of this waking state too. As I'm talking, hopefully you kind of introvert your mind and try to do what you see I'm trying to do here. And then you take that same perspective. This has nothing to do with, this is applicable to everybody, regardless of country, what do they say, caste, creed, sex, age. It applies, it's a universal applicable fact. So that everybody, if they're willing just to examine the fact of their own experience, they can come to understand exactly what's going on as I'm talking. If you're stuck in the waking, you'll never get this. You have to take the perspective of the subject in which the waking for a while appears to you, and then the dream appears. Once you have that perspective, now you're unattached. Nothing can affect you. There's no possibility of fear or desire or limitation in that subject. It's ever free, ever awake. When the waking state appears, you don't wake up. When the waking state goes, you don't go to sleep. Adi Buddha, awake from the beginning. You're always awake. You're always pure. You're always free. That's your eternal nature. That's the self. That's the self of this teaching. They call that self, in certain respects, God. Yourself, that inner light in you, is the God. He's not the guy with the beard, sitting somewhere, watching you, and is going to punish you if you're bad, and reward you if you're good. This God is the God that's the light in you. Think about it. When the dream appears to you, you're the light of that whole dream and the whole dream world. You're the only consciousness there. All the people that were appearing, do they have any consciousness? They're just objects in the dream. You're the only one that knows the whole dream. It's appearing to you. So you're the only knower of the whole dream. That means you're all-knowing. It's called omniscient with regard to the dream. With regard to the dream, everywhere you go in that dream, everywhere you look, everything that's happening has to happen in your consciousness. That means you're omnipresent. Omniscient, omnipresent. You can see in your own experience, at least with regards to the dream, you're the God of the dream. And all-powerful. Why is that? if my consciousness wasn't there, if I put it onto the waking, what happens to the dream? It can't exist for 1 second unless I'm there. Without me, the dream can't appear because it's appearing to me. If I'm gone, no dream. So I support the whole dream. Without me, there can be no dream world. That means I'm omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. It sounds like the theological God, yes? That God who's all-knowing, all-powerful, all-pervasive. You can see it in your own experience. In relation to the world, you could call that God. If there's a God, that's the God. He's never away from you because he's your own self. You probably have all, I don't know if all, but many people have heard this teaching, you are that, right? When they say you, they mean that witness in you. That witness in you is that. What do I have to do to become that? Nothing. How about if I stand on my head? Will I become that, more that? If I raise my chakras out of my pipic? Nothing, right? Any effort that I make to become that is actually a movement away. So I'm always that. Suppose I say, I believe it. I'm the witness of that thought. Suppose you say, no, I don't believe this. You're the witness of that. It's the one thing you can't think away. You can't think away the subject in you. I'm going to negate it, negate it, negate it, negate it, negate it. The very negation is because you're there. And when you're finished with the negation, it'll still be there. The hardest part to understand in all of this is, okay, I'm the witness of my dream. I'm the witness of my waking. But how about when there's no waking and no dream? Then I'm unconscious. Yes? Everyone says in deep sleep, I was unconscious. Where? What are you talking about? My conscious? Yes, I'm conscious of the waking when I'm awake. I'm conscious of the dream when I'm dreaming. But in deep sleep, my consciousness goes. I'm not aware of anything. I am not aware of anything. When the waking was there, I was aware of the waking. When the dream was there, I was aware of the dream. But when they both went away, I was not aware of anything. You're not denying your awareness. You're just denying that there was anything. In fact, it's because you're still awareness that you can say, there are times when I'm aware of something, and there's times when I am aware of nothing. But I'm always awareness. You can follow that kind of idea? So now we have an eternal consciousness, which is not in time or space, which never gets old, sick, or die, which has all of the things that everybody seeks in this life. What do we seek? I want to be free. This witness is, there's nothing to bind it. It's eternally free. I don't want to die. I want to be immortal. I'm immortal, I want to be immortal. Sir, your true self was never born, it will never die. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. The nature of the self is infinite bliss. Now that might be a little difficult. I can understand how I'm awareness and I'm not changing and even time, but why is it bliss? Why is the self in its very nature not caused by anything, because everyone thinks that my happiness is caused by something. But the very nature of the self, with no need to be caused, because it's like fire is hot. If there's fire, there's heat. It's the very nature of fire. The self is bliss because it's the bliss of not having a second thing. It's the bliss of having no fears, no worries, no desires. It's the bliss of non-duality. It's not like the happiness that I get caused by something, and then it has a beginning, and after a while it comes to an end, and then I'm out again for some other happiness. This happiness is not caused by anything, and that's why they call it bliss as opposed to happiness. Our worldly happinesses always have causes. The problem with the worldly happinesses is that they have a beginning, and therefore they must have an end. That's the nature of beginnings and ends. But because the self is always bliss, so the happiness that I'm seeking, the freedom that I'm seeking, the peace that I'm seeking, that's my nature. That inner light in you is your true self, and it has all of those qualities that I've been seeking for, unsuccessfully, in my ignorance. Because nobody thinks I'm that. Everybody thinks I'm this. In our ignorance, I don't say I am that. I say I am this. That mixing up of who I really am, my true nature, with what I'm not, is the cause of all of our suffering. No other cause. You are always what you wanted to be all the time. But because of a misconception, if you examine it, you'll see it's a misconception. I'm the subject. The waking and dream are objects. The body is an object. I'm the subject. The senses are objects. I'm the subject. My thoughts are objects. I'm the subject. And even this ego, the most inner thing in me that is my whole identity, is also nothing but a bunch of thoughts appearing and disappearing to me. But I'm identified with this ego. Someone says, hey, you don't look so good today. Oh! Because this is who I am. Hey, you gained some weight. Oh, did I? Because I'm totally identified. This is an object. I'm the subject. But I say, I am this. I, the subject, am this, the object. If you examine, you'll see I can never be this. The subject can never be the object. You have to see in your own experience, who's the subject and what's the object? This ego seems as though it's the subject. The senses seem as though they're the subject. The body, it's a conscious body. If you cut it, hey, I feel it. So it's a conscious body. My senses are conscious. My mind is conscious. But in fact, they're all objects to consciousness. And we've only attributed. I feel like this finger is conscious. But if I were to cut it off and put it on that table, I would then begin to question, is it still conscious? When it was here, it's the same molecules. It's inert. But I attribute, look in the dream, all the bodies that were appearing in the dream and the dream minds, they all seemed conscious, didn't they? But there was just one conscious subject for the whole thing. We've mixed up the consciousness which is myself with the object which is called not self. And this mixing up, this misconception is the whole problem of our life. We don't know ourselves. We haven't realized ourselves, and we've mixed ourselves up with the not-self. This body appears in the waking. It doesn't appear in deep sleep. It can come and go. I'm still there, unchanged, but I'm identified with this body, and that's death. As soon as you're this body, you get cholesterol, you gotta do all sorts of things, eat healthy, and eventually the body goes. If I'm the body, I'm going. But if it's a mistake, if I'm the subject and the body's an object, it's appearing and disappearing in me. From that perspective, I can realize I've made a mistake. And I don't know my true self. And when I know my true self, that's called self-realization. There's a tremendous benefit. All it was a misconception. But when I get rid of the misconception, and I know myself as I really am, I realize that I'm immortal bliss. It puts an end to the idea that I'm a little person on a planet that's here for 70, 80, whatever years, and then I check out and the world continues. Now the world is an appearance in me. It has no existence apart from me. I'm the truth of the world. It can't exist without me. I pervade it. I'm the warp and woof of the whole thing. If somehow I could remove my consciousness, the world would go with it. So the real self in this teaching is the witness of your thoughts. It's never hidden. It's always there. Whatever you're doing, it has to be there. When you're perceiving, thinking, doubting, believing, disbelieving, it's the one thing that you can't doubt. Because to doubt means that you have to be there to know the doubt. Everything else you can doubt except yourself. It's indubitable. This subject in you, how do I know that I'm the subject? That the world is appearing to me? How do I know that? Because some textbook or some philosopher? Or is it my experience? Self-revealed, self-evident. It's self-established. That the thoughts are objects and I'm the subject. I don't need to ask anybody. Because whatever they say, if it's against my experience, I'm not going to believe them anyway. So if you check your experience, you'll see the fact of the matter. I am the subject, not the object. The objects are changing, appearing and disappearing. Who to whom? Is the ego an object, or is it really the subject like everyone thinks? Is the ego the subject? I. This I thought. Is that the subject? Or is there something in which the I thought appears? We've mixed up the subject with the object, and the I thought seems as though it's conscious. It's kind of like if I were to have a glass of milk, and I were to pour some water in the milk and mixed it up, and then I were to ask somebody, can you just take out the water for me? I want to drink the pure milk. How am I going to separate the water from the milk? They become like one. That this is me is like the water in the milk, even though water is not milk. Milk is not water. There's this beautiful story of a mythical swan. In Sanskrit, swan is Hamsa. And the word Pada means supreme. So they have this word Paramahamsa. You may have heard it. They're like gurus called Paramahamsa. The great swan. Why is he a great swan? The mythology said in ancient days there was a great swan that had a special type of beak. And with this beak, if you were to take milk and pour water into it, he was able to dive into this thing, pull out the water, and leave you with the pure milk. He was called a Paramahamsa. Even though normal people can't see that it looks like one thing, the Paramahamsa is able to do this. So there are gurus in India, they're called Paramahamsas. Why? Because even though the self and the not self, the subject and the object, are as different as light and darkness, they become mixed up just like milk and water. And it's not that easy to discriminate the subject from the object, because the object looks like the subject. I'm the subject. I exist from the tip of my toe to here. This is me. I'm the subject. I never take the position that I'm the subject and this is the object. From that point of view, the Paramahamsa is the one who can separate the subject from the object, like the mythical swan who could take the milk, the water out of the milk. You need a certain capacity to do this. So everybody knows what the self is now, yes? At least according to this teaching. So the full name of this talk is called Steps to Self-Realization. But why do we need any steps? First of all, you said I'm already that, right? And the second thing is, I was listening to you, sir, and I understand what you're saying. So I've realized myself. Thank you very much. What's the need for steps? I listened to this, and for a moment I checked my own experience. Sure enough, this guy is talking about my experience. I can validate this right here. Yeah, I'm the witness of my thoughts. I'm the witness of my waking and dream. I'm the witness of the disappearance of those states. Yeah, I can understand that. So I'm self-realized. Class dismissed. We can all set up our own ashrams now. No. So why is this insufficient? I was sitting in the lecture. The guy was talking. While he was talking, I kind of examined my own inner goings-on, and I could see, you know, what he's saying is in accordance with my own experience. I don't have to believe him. If it's not my experience, I tell him, sir, no, I'm not the subject. My thoughts are the subject. They're not the object. That's not my experience. Fine, we can have a discussion. But for the people that say, yes, I realize I'm the subject and the thoughts are objects, even the ego is an object, I'm not the ego. So I've realized the self. So obviously this is not sufficient. Because what's going to happen is this talk will end shortly and everybody will get up and head out into the world. Boy, that was, okay. And we carry on. Same identification. Nothing changes much. I'll be back next year. That was very good talk. Thank you. You know the best restaurant in East Hampton. And this is how it goes. So this is what, why is this? I'll tell you a story. In India, they have these railway stations. One of the most famous ones is in Calcutta, called Church Station. Thousands of people, for generations, have lived in this train station. They live there, they camp, and the police let them, you can go even today, they're still hanging around. But in the 70s, it was filled with people. Anyway, how do these people survive? They beg. They go out in the streets. So one way that they would beg would be they'd have a baby. They put the baby in the arm and they would give the baby opium. The baby would sleep. And the mother would go, oh, baby, baby, food, food. And somebody would put some coins. And that's how they lived. When the baby grew up enough to be walking, the mother would say, okay, now you go out and you beg. So now as a 2, 3-year-old, they start to learn, no sir, and they bring back the, so he's a born beggar. He begs all his life. He's now about 30 years old, still begging, has a family, and in the train station, and he's walking, and he walks, and he sees on the floor a lottery ticket. He picks up the lottery ticket, scratches it off, bingo, super jackpot, $10 million. For real, he won the $10 million lottery. Now he's a millionaire. He buys a beautiful house. He doesn't know how to drive because he was in the train station, so he hires a limo driver and buys a beautiful limousine, and he buys beautiful clothing, and he's sitting in the back of the limousine. He tells the guy, take me for a drive. And he's sitting there, he's got the window down, feeling wonderful about his good fortune. And as he's driving, somebody on the street yells out, free food! And immediately, this guy's hand went out. He's been begging for 30 years. It was, as soon as he hears free, and then he saw, oh my God, how did that, and he put back his hand, quite embarrassed about it. He knew he was a millionaire, but because of that beggarly mind, that old habit, habitual mind, that even when he knew that he was a millionaire, that old habit didn't go away. It's kind of like that. You come to a talk like this, you hear this thing, it's like hitting the jackpot. You may not realize it. This is the jackpot. All the others are, this is beyond the lottery. But anyway, we hear this teaching, but our beggarly minds, they're so filled with the old habits, the old ideas, we immediately go back to the same things. Because at this class, at best, you can intellectually appreciate what I'm talking about. But it's just an intellectual appreciation. It hasn't sunk deep into your experience. You hear about this, but to understand the magnitude of it, the beauty of it, the sublimity of it, the profundity of it, it takes a mind that is capable. Look, this witness in you, it's the most in. Can you see that? That everything else is kind of object, so it's the inner subject. It's the most in. It's the most pure. And it's the most subtle. In order to realize that, so that it sinks into your experience and not just attending a lecture for an hour and a half and then we go about our business, this is the bad news. You have to do something. That's why nobody likes this part of the talk. The first part is delicious. Wow, the guy put me down there. That's it. Oh, great. The bad part is that beggarly mind. Another example that they often give is, you know, a lake that's covered with moss. If you take a rock, a little pebble, and you throw it in the middle, you know what happens? It opens up, and then you watch it. Slowly, 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 it closes again. Yeah? This teaching is like that. if the teacher is halfway decent and the student wants to understand, at the very time that they're listening, because it's a universal truth, the student can, oh, yeah, hey, oh. And that's kind of like that. But the mind is such that we lose it. You can't remain there. You can't stay there. You don't even want to. The ego has no use for this crap. The ego says, what's the benefit? Am I going to get laid? No. Am I going to make more money? No. More friends? More power? No. Then what's the benefit? What's the benefit? And all you can say is, the only benefit is that maybe, finally, you get rid of this son of a bitch who keeps asking, what's the benefit? What's the benefit? You can finally stop identifying, that's the benefit. If there's a benefit, it's the guy who wants, I want something out of it. That's the rascal I'm identified with him. So if any benefit. So in order to realize this truth, not as a textbook or some intellectual, but that it sinks deep into your experience so that there's an actual benefit to you. That you're no longer living exactly like other people are living. You falsified the whole thing. You don't feel that whatever happens here is going to really affect you. You get some distance from the whole thing. In order to do that, because this is the most the most subtle, the most pure, the mind, our minds have to be made like the self. We have to make our minds introvert, in. Because as long as the mind is looking out, there's none of this. Where's the witness? I can't. What color? What's the sound? What's the feel? The senses can't perceive it. And the senses are pointed out. So when the mind follows the senses, I see a beautiful Porsche. I want that Porsche. Now I start thinking about it. And then I wonder, what do I have to do to get that? Oh, it's a lot of money. I'll save up. Then I'll call. So now the mind is out because that thing is going to bring me happiness. When I get it, it'll be great. So the extrovert mind that's always, and it's natural. It's not that there's something wrong with this. The natural tendency of the human mind is out. For survival, it has to be out. But as long as it's out, you can never notice this truth about that inside you there's a light, a subject, a true self that's always there, that's never hidden. But because the mind is extrovert, we never take note of it. The whole spiritual journey is nothing more than that. Taking the mind, turning it inwards, purifying it, and realizing that truth, not intellectually, but like a berry on the palm of your hand, as clear as that, with no possible doubt, that when the experiences become your very nature, it will have practical effects on how you live. You won't live like everybody else. You get cut, and someone else gets cut. Person goes, oh, I'm cut. Even the person that that this knowledge is firm, when they get cut, oh, I'm cut. But that person is able to falsify it. He knows that I'm not really cut. It's not just some problem that he pacifies it. He knows that he can't be cut. My nature is beyond being cut. I can't be burnt. I can't be torn. Because I'm ever the same. I'm the truth of the whole universe. So the whole, I always give this example, I'll say it again. Our minds are kind of like a restaurant kitchen door on a hinge. And generally, it's this way. But when you hear this teaching, the mind gets that, turns in. As I was talking, if anybody understood anything I was saying, you had to do that. You had to turn your mind a little in. Or else you would, what's he talking about? That's what I mean by introverting the mind and seeing what's the subject and what's the object. As long as the mind is extrovert. So we have to make the mind somewhat pure. All spiritual practice, so-called spiritual practice, is nothing more than getting the mind having the capacity to realize this fact. As long as the mind is extrovert, at best it'll just be an intellectual thing and it won't be of much benefit. It's only when this sinks deep into your experience. So, with that as a preface, I'm going to briefly go through what is the steps. You can do it, you don't have to do it, but this is, you can see the rationale behind it. Even though there's no steps, you're that already. But in our ignorance, and everyone here is thickly in ignorance, including the speaker, which is that I am this body. You don't start with I'm that. I'm this body. You begin with this. So if I'm this body, there's a thing about this body. The body is constantly doing activities. We're all doing stuff. In Sanskrit, that word is called karma. We're all doing actions. And as long as I'm identified with this, I can't stop doing actions. If somebody were to say, I can stop actions, I'll just sit in my chair, I'm not going to do anything. There, I stopped actions. Well, you can ask that person, is your blood circulating? Yeah, well, that's an action circuit. Having any thoughts occasionally? Yeah, okay, that's an action circuit. You can't stop. As long as you have a mind, senses, and a body, you'll be acting. So the very first step is that since I have to act, the very first step on this spiritual journey is to act properly. Morality. Don't cheat. Don't lie. Don't steal. Things like humility. Things like lack of boastfulness. And one of the most important things is a lack of hypocrisy. Not putting a phony face to the world and having a private life that you don't want anyone to know. Being honest. These are not easy things. Try it. But that's the very beginning of the thing. You have to, in Sanskrit it's called dharma. Righteousness. Not cheating people. Not wanting to hurt people. Ahimsa. All of these basic qualities that you find in every tradition. It applies here also. That's the very beginning. Without that, you don't have a chance. So the very first thing in the Bhagavad, I don't like to quote the Bhagavad Gita because then it sounds like, oh, you got the Bible, the Torah, you got a holy book too. But the Gita is not a religious text. It, in fact, is a philosophical text with very practical advice for people that want to realize this truth. So the verse goes like this: Karmani eva adhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma karma palahetu bur. So what does that mean? As long as we're ignorant, we must act. until I realize that I'm the self which never acts. I never do anything. As long as I'm identified with this, I must act. So now I want to act in a dharmic way, in a way that is conducive to this goal. That's the very beginning. You must act. But there's a kind of a hitch with the actions. Whenever I do an action, it's natural to want to get the result of that action. Yes? If I save up my money, then I can buy what I like. That'll be the fruit of saving. If I do this, I'll get this. That's called the karma pala, the fruit of my action. So the second step, I'm going through these obviously quite fast. The second step is that, yes, I'm going to do actions, but not like everyone else. Everyone else is doing to get the result. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do whatever I have to do. You see, in the East, they had this concept of duty. We don't have that here. We're free. What duty? But there was an idea that in society, people had duty. So since here we don't really have a duty, we're free. Our duty is whatever our life has brought to us. If we're a wife, we have a duty to our husband. If we're a parent, we have duty to our children. If we have duty to earn a living, all of this is our responsibilities. Whatever we have to do, we do. But the second step is that I'm going to do whatever I have to do. But whatever happens, whatever the result, I'm not interested. I'll do whatever I have to do, and the result will be what it'll be, but I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it as my duty, as my responsibility, as a father, as a person in society, as a scientist, as a whatever I'm doing. But I'll do it that whatever the fruit comes, it'll be fine. And the second part to this, remember that witness I told you in you? That's God. Remember I tried to tell you the witness is God. But as long as I'm this, then that God is the supreme being. So now I'm going to do all of my activities, since I can't stop doing. I'm of this body and I can't stop doing. I'm going to do my actions righteously. I'm going to lose my interest in the results of those actions. And I'm going to do those actions in the feeling that I'll do it as an offering to that witness in me, to that supreme being that resides in the hearts of me. You know, the self that's in me is the same self that's in you. There's no difference. In the Gita it says, Ek Atma Sarva Bhuteshu, the one self in all beings. The witness in me and you is not different. Your thoughts are different, your upbringing is different, but the witness of those thoughts and the witness of my thoughts are different, but the witness is the same. That same witnessing consciousness, that God that dwells in the hearts of all beings, there He is, shining, waiting to be discovered, waiting to shine, to shed His grace on us, if we only turn to Him. So now, you see, it's starting to sound a little theological, right? But you can understand the theology here is that that God is just that witness that's lighting up all my thoughts. So I'm going to do my actions, whatever my duty or responsibilities are. I got to earn money, so I'll do it. Or even if I have hobbies or talents or whatever, I'll do it. Whatever the result will be, I'm not. So if you do it like that, look how you immediately become different than ordinary people. When people are doing it for the result, Sometimes the result comes and they're elated. Sometimes the result that they wanted doesn't come and they're dejected. But the person who's performing his activities without their eye on that, they get equanimity of mind. Because it's our attachment to the fruit of the work. And sometimes things happen not like I wanted them. But if you're not attached to that result, the mind will get some equanimity. That's the beginning of a pure mind. The second purity of the mind, because we said the mind has to become introvert, pure and subtle. When I'm not interested in the fruit and I've yoked, there's a Sanskrit word, everyone's heard it here, it's called yoga. You've heard the word yoga. The root, the Sanskrit root for the word yoga is yuj. What it means is to join. Yoga means to join. When I've joined my mind to that inner light inside of me, that's the real yoga. It has nothing to do with putting your head behind your ear. That yoga is no yoga at all, in fact, because it tends to increase our identification with this body. I don't know if you know this, Swamis are prohibited to do Hatha Yoga for the very reason that it increases their identification. Hey, look how stretched out I am. I can stand it. It's not that you shouldn't keep the body healthy, but an obsession with that business, then it's not yoga. The real yoga is yoking your mind to that inner light inside of you, joining. So doing your actions, disregarding the fruit, and turning your mind to that supreme being that's always there inside of you is called karma yoga. You probably heard the word. It doesn't mean volunteering at the ashram to wash the dishes. Or that, oh, I have to do my karma yoga now. Karma yoga is doing actions and yoking it to that, joining your mind to that while the actions are going on, unconcerned about the fruit. Now the mind is starting to become introvert, unlike the natural tendency of the mind. Now the mind is thinking about that. That's the second step. Pretty tough business, right? Who would even want? But that's not, I'm sorry to say. The third step is this. In the previous step, the idea was, I'm the body, I'm doing these actions, but I'm not attached to the result, and I'm kind of offering it up to that Supreme Being. Once the mind has achieved a certain amount of subtlety and equanimity through this practice, the next step is to discriminate what I started the talk with, but in a much more incisive and clear way. The reason we started this class was with an Om was so that your minds, hopefully, my mind, hopefully, would calm down for a minute so that this subject matter could be discussed, and the worldly things that we walked in the door with for a moment, you can put them aside. Here, the mind is getting habituated to that through that practice, but you're still the doer. You're doing things. The next stage is what's called, you have to discriminate. If you look, whenever you do an action, there's a thing that generally precedes the action. It's called a volition. Sanskrit called a sankalpa. A volition. Should I go to the Golden Pear to get coffee this morning? Someone said the coffee's not. Yeah, I think they have good bagels there. I'm going. So it begins with that. And then as you think about it, then you get a desire. I'm going to go. In the beginning, it was just kind of, should I? So you start ruminating on the thing. and then the desire arises. Once I desire the thing, I'm off. So now I do the activity, the karma, and I go. And then I eat the bagel. I get the fruit of my actions. And this is the normal routine. But here in the next stage, this is the beauty of it. The thought, that very first volition that arose in my mind, I see that I'm the witness, I'm not that volition. And the activity of going to the pair, I am the witness, it's the body that's going, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not in space or time. I'm always here, it's always now, from my point of view. Whether I'm laying in my bed, in the Himalaya mountains, or sitting on this chair, from the point of view of myself, I haven't gone anywhere. I am always here, always the same. This type of discrimination, now that the mind, now you're not even identified with the action. The first was called karma palatyaga, abandoning the fruits. The next stage is called Naishkarma Siddhi, which means you have no attachment to the action at any phase, from the volition to do it, right up to the fruit. Now you're really free, because whatever happens can't affect you anymore. This is a very, on the stages in the Gita, this stage of attaining the perfection of actionlessness. That's the translation of Naishkarmya Siddhi. Siddhi means perfection. Naishkarmya means actionlessness. Only a person who's like that Paramahamsa that separated the witness from this thing that's acting can understand, even though the body is doing all of this business, I do nothing. Even while the senses are moving against the sense objects, I do nothing. This discriminative wisdom in which you negate the idea. In the Gita there's a famous verse, it says, Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu. Even though engaged in actions, he would think, I do nothing. That's the third stage. You're no longer an agent, because it's the body that's acting, it's the mind that's acting, it's the ego that's acting. I am the witness that never acts. This discriminative wisdom about the self, over and over, falsifying the whole thing. I'm the witness, whatever's appearing is just going on, but I'm unaffected by it. That's called, from the point of view of karma, it's called the state of actionlessness. You realize the self that never acts. Even while all the activities are going on, I do nothing. From the point of view of action, it's called actionlessness. From the point of view of wisdom, it's called jnana-nishta. That person who's established in that wisdom about the self, that it never does any action. It's not in time. It's achala, unchanging. Avikara, never transforming itself. It has no parts. It can't, like, only if it had parts it could do something. There's no parts in it. This person, from the point of view of knowledge, is called the jnana-nishta. His mind is rooted in this thing. From the point of view of action, he's attained the state of actionlessness. And from the point of view of devotion, that mind, which is totally rooted in that, focused on that, obsessed with that, realizing that that's the only refuge. Nobody gets out of here alive. This is the only chance. I am that which never was born. I am immortal bliss. Being devoted to that, wanting that, seeing that there's nothing higher than that, that's called bhakti. So from the point of view of emotion, that the heart and the mind has fallen in love with that. From the point of view of knowledge, that knowledge, he's established in that. From the point of view of action, he's attained actionlessness. That person who is now at that stage of sadhana, spiritual practice, he's the one who, when the teacher says to him, "You are that," he doesn't walk out of the class the same. He's the one who can realize this deep in his own experience. It's not just an intellectual game or a concept or something that he's memorized. It's as clear as the berry on the palm of your hand. It's indubitable. You can't even, the conviction about it. When you're at that stage, then the final teaching. You are that. You don't even know that. Because you're not a knower. It's the mind that knows things. You are infinite bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. Existence beyond time and space. Consciousness bereft of all objects. And bliss not caused by anything. These type of practices, losing our interest in the fruit, turning our minds towards that, eventually through discrimination, rejecting the whole idea that I even do anything, getting yourself established in that knowledge. How do you get yourself established in that knowledge? You have to think about it. You have to listen to it. Of course, the very best way to get this knowledge is to be with somebody who's very established in it. Because what they do is two things. They're not talking from book knowledge. The words have a strength to them. They have the capacity to take our extrovert mind and throw it back. When that person who's talking from his own experience, not book knowledge, where to him it's so clear, it's so obvious, so there's a conviction behind it. There's a force, and then you can verify that. So the best thing is to have a teacher. Other than that, there are books. As you read these books, the very function of the books is to turn your mind back to that. They're very helpful. You can reflect yourself on this. And in fact, I won't get into it tonight, but there are certain meditations, Vedantic meditations, that can help us recognize this truth. It's not like meditating on a candle or anything like that. It's this very slowly bringing the mind back, rooting it on that witness, and let it merge in that witness. And remaining is that. As soon as the mind shoots forth again with thoughts and ideas and concepts, to grab that mind forcefully, we're not going there right now, and to bring it back and once again, and over, to purify the mind so that we can understand this simple 3 words that nobody can understand. I am that. I, the witnessing consciousness, not the ego. I, that, the only reality, the unchanging reality, the infinite bliss, am, the identity that I've always been that. I'm that now. Even when I didn't know it, I was that. The knowledge just removed my ignorance of the fact, but the fact remains. When I mistake a rope for a snake and I'm scared, it's because of my ignorance. I don't know there's a rope there. I mistook it as a snake. But even when I mistook it as a snake, there was only a rope, even at the time. And when I finally put the flashlight there, oh, now I know what it is. No snake got destroyed and no rope. It was always a rope. But because of my ignorance, I mistook it. I'm always the witness. But I naturally say I'm the witness, even though the witness and the witnessed are like light and darkness. It's kind of like if I was the object, if I'm the subject, I can never objectify myself. Whatever I'm aware of can't be me. It's like a finger trying to scratch itself. The finger can scratch, but it can't scratch. The subject can't become an object. Whatever you're the subject that can't be objectified. It's always present, but you can't think of it because it's the witness of every thought. It has no color, no shape, so what will you grasp onto? No word can describe it because it's the witness of every word. No concept can conceive of it because it's the witness of every concept. If you ever get cut and you're in pain, you might want to do this type of exercise. Just inside. You won't be able to do it when you're cut. Immediately, Band-Aid. But later, when you calm down, you can go, if I'm aware of the pain, and I was aware of the pain, if I'm aware of it, the pain can't be me, and it can't be in me. Anything that I'm aware of must be an object to me. Whatever happens to the object doesn't affect the subject. Were you aware of the pain? Yes. Then it can't be me, and it can't be in me. That's the fact of human experience, of universal experience. If you're aware of it, it can't be you. That's the final dictum. To get a mind that's pure enough, introvert enough, subtle enough, unlike our minds that are now filled with a million desires, a million fears, a million ambitions. This is what I want to do for my children, I'm fixing the house, new addition. It goes on until, and we never have a minute to even reflect on this stuff. We don't even think it's worth anything because what's the benefit? So the practical part of this is that if you really want to make this, if you kind of have an intuition, I think then the mind more and more has to get a taste for it. The mind always goes where the happiness is. Mind wants to be happy. As long as the mind is sure the happiness is out there, you're out. But a discriminating person, I think, can come to understand an inherent limitation. That the very happiness, within that happiness, there's the womb of suffering. It's called dukkha yoni, the source of suffering. That thing that made me happy, that Haagen-Dazs, as I'm eating it, by the fourth pint, it's... Nah, I don't think that's the source of happiness. In fact, it's now a source of pain. It's the same with our loved ones and everyone. They'll go, they'll get sick, or we're going to have to go before them and we'll lose them. None of these things can bring us the thing that we really want. Because what do we really want? Let me talk for myself. You guys, I want to be happy. And I want to be happy forever. And I want to be infinitely happy. You know, happiness. If there's infinite happiness that never comes to an end, I'm in for that. It turns out that that desire is what you already are. You are infinite bliss. This whole world arises in bliss. It abides in bliss. It merges in bliss. It's just bliss. But we see it as happiness and sorrow. So that's the basic sadhana. The lecture is one thing. The practice is all about the mind willing to turn inwards. You can do this, like I said, by doing actions and getting your life somewhat honest and righteous. After that, lose your interest in the fruits. They're not really going to bring what you want. Turn your mind to that. And eventually, discriminate enough to realize, I'm not the actor. I do nothing. Then you'll be free from the whole rigmarole. And your mind will be yoked. The real yoga. Yoked to that. Established in that. That's the person who in the far very end, he can realize the truth. I am that, and he'll be that. The most famous saying in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad is, Brahma vid, Brahma bhavati. The knower of this truth, the knower of the Absolute, is the Absolute. When you know this, you'll be that. In this teaching, to know doesn't mean to know. It means to be. That's the end. That's called liberation. I think I'll leave it at that note. We'll do some questions? Okay.
Take more.
So let's do a couple of minutes if anybody has a question or two. I'm sure it's in
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're talking about that practice goes inward to the subject. But what about tantric? Because doesn't that talk about taking that eventually outward?
Tantra is an Indian philosophy that started in about probably the 3rd century AD in India. It migrated, there's Buddhist Tantra and Hindu Tantra. This teaching is totally different than Tantra. Tantra says you can get rid of all your desires by satisfying them. So, you've all heard of tantric sex, and tantricas eat meat and drink alcohol, and because they think if you can totally get all your desires satisfied, you'll be finished. But according to Vedanta, desires are like a fire. And every time you fulfill it, it's like throwing fuel in the fire. It doesn't quench it. It makes it get bigger. Satisfying desires makes you just have more desires. You'll never get rid of desires by satisfying. Tantra is it's a dualistic teaching also. This is a non-dual teaching. Tantra, I mean, for example, are you familiar with Kashmiri Shaivism? Mm-hmm. Kashmiri Shaivism, somebody? So that's a tantric Shaivism thing. And there, you don't have to negate the world or realize the world is false. It's all the dance of Shiva. So you can participate in it and use it in a tantric way and realize that it's all Shiva and all of it. But this teaching is absolutely different. And in fact, it's the desires that pull our mind out. And like I said, by filling those desires, they won't go. There'll be infinite desires. As soon as you satisfy one, another, and they get bigger. The only way is to see the defect in the desires, that they won't really bring me what I really want. And what I really want is what I already am, but don't know it. So it's not a question of satisfying desires. It's also not a question of giving up all desires. It's a question of our identification with the desires. Desires are natural. Everyone desires food. You're not going to stop that. Sex is natural. Everyone's going to desire that as long as you're healthy. Food, air, and sex. It's going to go on. But the identification doesn't have to go on. You can see the truth of the matter and falsify the whole thing. Once you've taken your stand there, you can make this like a dream. And once it's like a dream, you're freed from it. As long as you think it's real, the desire for that thing is going to be more and more. Question?
I have a question.
Oh! Sneaking up on me. Yes,
Not
yes,
at all.
yes.
So when we try to discriminate, there appears, at least with me, a narrative that goes in my mind. Back and forth discussion. What's the true discussion? Which is the voice that one listens to? And secondly, you said about us being the light on the as far as the dream world. And in the old analogy of the movie screen in the movie, once the movie's over, the screen remains. How does that play? Is the screen self-illuminating? Am I the screen showing it all?
In that analogy, the screen is the witness. Whatever appearing on that screen is the witness. Whatever appears doesn't affect the screen. When the images go, the screen is still there, exactly the same. So with that as the illustration, the thing that's being illustrated is that your true self is unaffected by whatever appears. Just like those images can't exist without the screen, the appearances can't exist without you as the light lighting up every appearance means what? It's appearing to what? To who? To me. I'm the light that lights up the appearances. The first question, this inner dialogue that you're having, what's this guy talking about? Huh, it seems to make sense, I don't make sense. What is that? Obviously, that's not yourself. The witness that's witnessing all of that inner talk is different than that. It's the mind that has all the questions and all the answers and wants more questions and has doubts. But the witness of all of the inner talk, see, that's the thing. We have to see, is this some kind of hocus pocus, woo-woo, or is there really a witness in me? It's not to be believed. So if it is validated or verified, if the person says, yes, I can see that all of that talk inside, I don't believe this crap. Oh, this is interesting. All of that is just the mind going about its business and in no way affects the subject, which is the witness of the mind. Everybody thinks the mind is conscious. But in this teaching, the mind is as much as an object as the object outside. They're both inert, they both appear and disappear, and they both have no existence apart from you, but they're not you. So that inner talk, of course, is the mind, not the self. And the analogy is correct. In that illustration, you can take the witness as the screen, and everything that's appearing, that means waking and dream, and what we call deep sleep is the screen with no images. The screen doesn't go,
Just the images go. So the screen is unaffected, whether the images are appearing or not, whether waking or dream is there, or whether they both disappear. I'm ever the same, ever pure, ever free, immortal bliss. To intuit that truth, that that's my true reality, to see it as a fact, not as a, like I say, theological dogma that you have to believe like a blind faith. I believe it. Why? The Bible said it. My rabbi said it. But I don't really know. But this subject, are you the witness of all your thoughts? Does that witness change? When you were an adolescent, you had adolescent thoughts. When you were a grown man, you had grown man thoughts. The thoughts are always changing. Is there something in you that never changes? That right from the... You see, the whole idea when I was... It's like in a dream. A guy is saying, when I was a young man. There was no young man. The dream appeared he was 40 years old already. He's dreaming that he was a young man. And that he had the same consciousness. That thing in you which never changes. The body is changing constantly. It can't be you. The senses are changing. It can't be you. You know, David Hume, the famous English continental philosopher, said, whenever I look inside myself, I always find some perception, some thought, but I can never find anything that I would call a permanent self. Perhaps there's such a thing in others, but for myself, I haven't been able to locate one. The Buddhists say the same thing. Whenever I look for a self, I can never find it. Everything is changing. My mind is changing. My body's changing. There's no self. And Vedanta says, how do you know they're changing? There has to be something unchanging. If you were changing, you wouldn't even know you were changing. There has to be an unchanging principle on the basis of which you say everything is changing. Why didn't the Buddhists and David Hume and other great philosophers, why don't they recognize this self that we're talking about? Why can't they see it? Why can't they think of it? Why can't? Because it's not an object. They're seeking it as though it were a thing. It's the witness of everything that can't be witnessed. You can't objectify it. In the Upanishads, they describe it like this. That which can't be known by the mind, but that by which the mind itself is said to be known. That which can't be known by the mind, whatever you think of is not it. But that by which the mind itself is known, know that to be the self, and not what they meditate on as this. It's the witness who can't be witnessed. You have to intuit this truth. You could say you have to experience it, but experience has the idea experience. But this knowledge comes from inside. You directly intuit it. It's a valid experience, but the better word would be to intuit. I don't like that word because the word intuition also has the connotation of like a hunch. I got an intuition it's going to rain tomorrow. But what I mean by intuition is seeing the fact directly. How do you know you're the witness of your dream? I know it directly. It's self-evident. There's no... What proof? The only proof is your intuition. We intuit the dream. We intuit the waking. How do you see the dream? With these eyes? No. These eyes were left in the waking state. You see it with no eyes. You hear it with no ears. You see it directly.
Immediately, we intuit the states. You don't see it through your sense organs. That direct intuition of the witness lighting up everything is your true self. So we have to intuit this. And the mind has to keep going back to that to see, is it a fact? Is it real? Have I tricked myself? An inquiring mind, a critical mind, a doubting mind is what's required here. Someone who really wants to know the truth of the matter and wants to decide it not on what anyone else has told them. Because you can't decide this by a vote. If 10 people say there's a witness and 100 say there isn't, how will you know? It's kind of like touching a fire. When you put your finger in the fire, you know it's hot. If some logician comes and says, I'll prove to you the fire is cold, you can tell him, save your breath, sir, because whatever you say, you can't contradict my own experience. So that's the criteria of this teaching. You have to see, is it your experience? And if it is, how did I miss it? If it's always there with every thought, how did I miss it? These are things that this is the spiritual quest, the spiritual inquiry. This turning in and seeing the fact of the matter. I hope I addressed some of the questions. Sir.
So if I witness myself detaching myself from my body self, from my experiences, from my emotions, then I'm not the witness, because witnessing just happens. The meta-awareness happens. There's kind of and then I'm detached from that meta-awareness. It's kind of an infinite regression. And how do I detach myself from craving for bliss?
2 points.
Yes.
You know, like I said, in this teaching, you're the witness, right? And whatever is appearing is the witness, and you're not that. You're the witness, not the witness. So when you say this, that this is an ancient teaching, when you say it to Buddhists, the Buddhists go, all right, let's just say there is a witness. They say there's no witness, you know, because here's what they say. And then you think about it. The Buddhists say this: the thoughts don't need a witness. The thoughts know themselves. The thoughts are self-conscious. They don't need a witness to know them. The thoughts know themselves. It's called in Sanskrit Svasamvedanam. The thoughts know themselves. You Vedantin guys, you postulated something that is unverifiable, unexperienceable. Only you guys talk about it. And we don't need it. The thoughts know themselves. And furthermore, sir, if you say you need a witness to know the thoughts, then you'll need another witness to know that witness. And you'll need another witness and you'll wind up with a regress ad infinitum. So rather than go with this witness business, let's just take it that the thoughts know themselves. The thoughts are conscious. It's a conscious mind, and it's constantly changing. But they know, the mind knows itself. So, what's the answer? Do I want to take a stab at it?
Thoughts are not conscious.
The thoughts... Who said
Thoughts are
that?
not conscious.
Oh, Paul. The thoughts are not conscious, you say, right? But nobody in this group believes that,
It's
except
what you know.
Say that again?
It's what you know.
It's what you know, that you're the witness.
Just you know.
You just know it directly. Because it is true, without the witness, you wouldn't know the thoughts. But what do you need to know the witness? Do you need another witness to know that you're the witness of thoughts? That which is lighting up everything doesn't need a light to light it up. It's self-lit. It's the only thing that's always shining. That shining, everything else shines. It lights up the darkness and the light. It doesn't need anything to light it up. That witness in you is self-revealed, self-evident, self-manifest. That I'm the witness of my thoughts is a self-evident fact of everyone's experience. If you say, no, the thoughts know themselves. Oh, does the thought know when it's gone? Thought's gone, it can't know that it's gone. How do you know the thought's gone? Because I'm the witness of the presence and absence of the thoughts. I don't need another witness to witness my witness, sir. The witness is self-evident. Everything else is only evident because of the witness. But the witness, it's like in a dark room. It's not the greatest example, but in a dark room, if I were to light a candle, I say, hey, the candle's lighting up now everything in the room. But I have to light another candle to light up, to illuminate that. No. Not only does it light up everything in the room, the candle is self-lit. That's the self. It doesn't need anything to light it up. It's already lit. Something to think about. I may not have answered your question fully, but that's the idea.
Why reify that, being more illuminated than it is? Why is the witness more illuminated or more reified than anything else? It's just
Because the difference is this: everything that's being illumined comes and goes, appears and disappears, is impermanent. But the witness in me that's illuminating is always present, never goes, and therefore is the only reality. Why do I say that? There's a certain rule in Vedanta, you can take it for what it's worth. It says, that which changes can't be real, and that which is real never changes. If you examine your experience, you'll see the only thing that's real is myself. It never changes. And everything that's appearing and disappearing can't be real. It has no independent existence apart from me, and it's not me. So it's just like a snake on a rope. It's just an appearance in me, but in fact, the only truth of that snake is the rope. The only truth of the appearance is me. I am everything. I am the truth of everything. Sarvam idam atmam. All this is the self alone. Ekam advityam. One without a second. There's really nothing else here except the self. That's even more difficult to understand. I think that's plenty to digest for this evening.
Thank you.
So you